What's going on, guys? Tower number 9 here with the next installment of my Force 5 series, where I'm playing at least 5 games with every leader from the new Twilight of the Republic set. Today, we're going to take a look at Asajj Ventress. Let's get right into it. So, Asajj Ventress, Unparalleled Adversary. She is a leader who deploys on 4 resources, Cunning, Villainy aspects. On her leader side, she can exhaust to attack with a unit. If you played an event this phase, it gets +1 power for the attack. And when she's deployed as a leader unit, she's a 3/4. And on attack, if you played an event this phase, this unit gets +1 power for this attack and deals combat damage before the defender. So if you've played an event, she has a shoot first type effect going that can make her very formidable, especially given how quickly she deploys. Deploying on 4 resources is, at least right now, the fastest leader deployment that we have. So I think she has some real possibilities, though it is worth noting that 4 HP is pretty vulnerable. There are a lot of things that can take her out, so you do have to be a little careful of that. All right. What I ended up building with her was actually a double yellow deck. And the reasoning behind this was basically I had actually had a discussion with someone over at a local game store. I think I forget if it was like a pre-release or a draft or what, but we were discussing the possibilities of playing a double Cunning Ventress as an alternative to double Cunning Boba. And we'd been discussing this actually before Boba Fett got banned. So once Boba got banned, it seemed like it was really a good time to be testing something like this out. So I have a build here. A lot of the cards are cards that are actually not from Twilight of the Republic. There are some Twilight of the Republic cards mixed in there, but this deck is going for a unit composition similar to what you might see in a Boba Yellow deck, but we've added some new tricks like the Elite P-38 Starfighter. Now there are 2 of them, and of course the new Asajj Ventress leader, making the deck a bit more aggressive. So this is focused around the Underworld trait for synergy with Now There Are 2 of them. We have a lot of Underworld 2-cost units. We play Now There Are 2 of them, and then our targets for it are Bossk and Zuckuss. So bringing in Bossk or Zuckuss on turn 2 can be pretty huge. Now There Are 2 of them is not the most consistent card in the world. If you draw it later in the game when you have a more established board, it's probably going to be dead, but it can be so impactful when it does go off. I think it would be at least interesting to consider a Now There Are 2 of them build, but I was testing with it and quite enjoying it, so we'll have to see where things end up with more refinement. But at least for now, we got the Now There Are 2 of them package with Bossk and Zuckuss. And the base here is the Petranaki Arena. So this is one of the new so-called breakpoint bases where all it does is buff your leader's stats. So in exchange for having only 26 HP instead of 30, each leader unit you control gets +1 power. I think this is actually a really good base for an aggressive deck. Losing that base HP usually doesn't matter. The main scenario where it would matter would be if you were in an aggro mirror. But bumping Ventress's base power up to 4 allows you to take out a lot of common Sentinel units in one attack, even if you haven't played an event, and it allows you to take out 5 HP units in one hit if you have played an event, which can be pretty relevant in some scenarios. For instance, if you're in an aggro mirror against Sabine, this Petranaki Arena, if you've played an event that turn, Ventress can defeat Sabine in one shot without taking any damage. Could be quite a relevant interaction. So I'm enjoying this base. And then, of course, if you're playing against a control deck where they're not trying to push damage to your base and they want to try and stabilize the board, having this text is almost certainly better than having the extra 4 HP. One interesting interaction with this deck that I found is that Surprise Strike works really well with Ventress, because if you play a Surprise Strike on her, she gets +3 power, so we're bringing her up to 7 or 8 because we have the Arena. And then additionally, it would be 7 base because you get the 3 base power +3 for Surprise Strike +1 for her on attack text because you played an event. So that's 7. With the Arena, it's 8, and that can kill a lot of opposing leaders outright, even more powerful ones. And it's also great for just putting pressure on the base. And this deck isn't playing the Hotshot Deal 44, which has replaced Surprise Strike for a lot of builds. And the reason for that is with Ventress's text on both sides of her card favoring playing events, I would rather be playing events than I would be playing upgrades. So we're staying on Surprise Strike. We haven't made the switch over to the Hotshot Deal 44 Blaster like some other aggressive decks have. And you know, it's a classic card, it's a strong card, and it's even better here with Ventress's abilities. So in the sideboard of this build, we have some more disruption stuff available. So this deck is quite aggressive, but it does still have some options for sort of some more tempo-oriented plays and ways to mess with opponents. We have No Good to Me Dead in there, which is good if you're worried about, I don't know, Darksaber, Sabine, you know, opponents doing stuff like that. We have Waylay, which can return a non-leader unit to its owner's hand. And we have the Lurking Tai Phantom, which is a great way to punish decks that are weak in space. It can be extremely annoying for opponents to deal with because so many normal removal cards don't work on it. However, the Lurking Tai Phantom is sideboard in this build because these days there are a lot of kind of space-heavy decks, and if the opponent has a bunch of units in space, the Lurking Tai Phantom is really bad. It's one of those cards where it's best in a situation where it's exploiting a weakness rather than one where it's just going to be something you're going to want to throw out there every game. So I did leave it in the sideboard of this build instead of the main deck. Overall, I've had a lot of fun playing this deck. Having Ventress come out and then playing 4-cost events has been really cool. You know, you hit them with Cunning, you hit them with you hit them with Cunning, you hit them with the new On the Doorstep card that gives you 3 ready battle droids, and that's been pretty sweet. But one other thing that I found is that cheap events mean a lot for Ventress, and as a result, we're actually playing 3 copies of Look the Other Way. This is not a card that was very popular when it first came out. It's a 0-cost event, exhaust a unit unless its controller pays 2. So normally this is like a decent card, but when it enables Ventress's ability, it's a lot better. And the 0 cost lets you play it while doing other things that turn, still getting the +1 power either from the leader ability or the +1 power and shoot first effect on Ventress herself. Even if the opponent ends up paying 2 to not have their unit get exhausted, this can potentially still be worthwhile. And it is also worth noting that timing-wise, Ventress does not have to be deployed when you play an event. You can, in order to get the benefit, so you can play an event, then deploy Ventress, and she'll still have that shoot first effect. She doesn't need to be in play as a unit at the time that you play the event in order to get the benefit. I actually thought this was cool enough that I thought it might be worth trying to get more cheap events in, and that synergy with event, as I mentioned earlier when we were discussing Surprise Strike, is why I'm not running the Hotshot Deal 44. Okay, so that's the overall structure of the build, and here are some other things that I think might be worth testing out. So breaking in on the left here, attack with a unit gets +2 power and gains Saboteur. This is very similar to Surprise Strike, but you lose a point of power in exchange for getting Saboteur as well. Personally, I think Surprise Strike tends to be better. I haven't been finding Saboteur to be all that important necessarily, and I already have some built-in Saboteur on certain units. However, it does strike me as conceivable that you want more of these buff effects, especially because they work well with Ventress's ability. So this card could end up making the cut in a different version of the deck, and it would be one of the first cards that I'd be interested in including in a version where I was removing the Now There Are 2 of Them package. Next up, we have Triple Dark Raid. This is another, Triple Dark Raid is another card that's been very successful, and in this case, I think I would have to change some elements of the deck in order to get more vehicles and more consistency with it, but it's another card that's been very successful for villain aggro decks, and I think it might be interesting to see how whether there was a version of Ventress that uses this one as well. And again, because it is an event, it would enable her ability and allow you to get in there for some bonus damage or that shoot first effect if she's in play as a unit. And then on the right, we have Unnatural Life. That is a card that it recently came out and that hasn't seen a ton of play that I've seen thus far, but that strikes me as potentially able to do something similar to Triple Dark Raid in terms of getting you some extra aggression on the field and potentially surprising and overwhelming an opponent. That one, play a unit that was defeated this phase from your discard pile. It costs 2 less and enters play ready at the start of the regroup phase. Defeat it. I think that could be especially cool if you were bringing in, the Elite P38, for instance, because let's say the opponent takes that out and then you use Unnatural Life. You get that when played again. You get the when defeated again. Seems like a situation where you could generate a lot of value, but haven't tested this out. It would be something that I think might be interesting to explore, especially if you're curious about a version of this deck that cuts. Now there are 2 of them. Now there are 2 of them is not the most consistent thing in the world, but it is pretty strong when it's strong. And if you might want to change that and go for something like this instead. Your call, of course. So that is what I ended up with for Ventress here, and it's worth noting also that this shifted a bit over time. I ended up playing more events as it went on because it seemed to me that was an important way to get value out of her ability. But what do you think? Do you think, well, Hotshot Deal 44 is such a good card, I want it anyway, even if it doesn't have the event synergy? Have you found some other events that seem good for including instead of the ones that I picked? Are there other cards that you want to run? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. But yeah, that's gonna about do it for this one, guys. Thanks again for watching, and we'll be back later with some more Star Wars Unlimited content. I will catch you guys later.